What is up, guys? I have not been here for a long time, but because I've shared so much of my journey on YouTube in relation to my inflammatory bowel disease, all my surgeries, pregnancy, I just thought, like, you know what, I have to share this with you all because it's an update. And for those who follow my journey with inflammatory bowel disease, then I mean, it's like a part of the journey, right? So, as you can see by the title, it's not been a great time for me, to put it in a roundabout way. It's been quite challenging over the last 6 or so weeks, but it didn't just happen overnight. And I want to share my experience with you all and the journey from last year to now and how everything just added up, like in hindsight, which is a beautiful thing, right? So in the middle of 2024, so last year, I started to notice that I was unable to fully empty, which was frustrating because, you know, I felt like I was full, my J pouch was full, but I knew that I couldn't quite empty it. And obviously, we know with J pouches, we can't force these things, we have to let it flow. So my J pouch nurse and my surgeon both agreed that I started using like an irrigation system, almost like a mini little bottle of a water enema. And this really helped with getting rid of the last bit that I obviously couldn't do myself. Now, obviously, this was probably the start of something that we didn't realise, because I always said to them that when I was trying to empty or like go to the toilet, that it always felt like something was kind of like in the way on the left side. And I had a scope, and my pouch looked great. And we were just kind of miffed on what was going on. And we kind of put it down to maybe it was, you know, some structural issues post-pregnancy, or just something that can happen with J pouches. Like, this is, I mean, like something like a common scenario. So I kind of went on my jolly old way and, you know, continued using my enema every single night, like a little water bottle. And it was like going really well. Like, I was emptying, I felt good, my J pouch function was great. Fast forward again now till September, October time last year. I discovered that my lymph nodes in my left side of my groin were quite swollen and tender. So I went to my GP and was like, okay, what's going on here? Something's obviously happening because my lymph nodes are up. And she essentially told me that it was menstrual cycle related. Now, I was like, okay, I'll wait for my period to arrive and hopefully they'll go down. But they didn't. And I actually went on holiday to Portugal at the time, and the lymph nodes were so swollen that I was actually embarrassed to wear a bikini, because, like, whatever was going on, which was, we didn't know at the time, the perianal abscess, it was trying to tell me something, and it was very obvious at this point. So when I got back from Portugal, I will say something about Portugal now. Me and my husband both managed to fall ill with food poisoning, and I can't tell you how horrible it was to have food poisoning with a J pouch, but also travelling home with food poisoning with a J pouch. Like, I have to put it up there in my top 5 achievements that I didn't actually poo myself on the flight. Okay, I'm just going to put that out right now. It has to be up there in my top 5 achievements because, oh my gosh, like, it was awful. So not only was I having to deal with these swollen lymph nodes in my leg, in my groin, I had to also deal with food poisoning. But it's funny because at the same time as this is all going on with the really swollen lymph nodes, I got hold of my J pouch nurse and said that I had some leaking and, like, it wasn't stool. So we assumed that I had cufitis, so the part of the rectum that's left to join, obviously, between the anus and the pouch. They obviously leave a little cuff, and we assumed that it was that. So when I got back from holiday, I started those suppositories, but they wasn't doing anything. And looking back on it now, that was probably maybe a slight rupture to the abscess, and it was obviously coming away, and we kind of didn't put 2 and 2 together. Anyhow, this all calmed down, but the lymph nodes were still up. Okay, the lymph nodes were still like, telling me something was wrong. So at this point I was like, I need to go back to the GP and discuss with them about my lymph nodes. They ordered me to have a ultrasound, and they also ordered me to have my blood tests. Both absolutely fine. So we were now left like scratching our heads. The GP didn't really follow up with me with what was going on. I was kind of still left in the dark. And at this point I was so frustrated because I just didn't quite know what was going on in my body. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to have one last go at the GP. And I actually met with a GP that was just, honestly, I get emotional thinking about it now because he was absolutely brilliant. And for those who are watching this now and you suffer with a chronic illness, you know just how challenging it can be going to your GP talking about your illness, because sometimes they just look at you with a blank expression on their face and just not understanding what you're trying to tell them. And in hindsight, maybe I should have been a bit more proactive with my inflammatory bowel disease team. And life gets in the way, right? I've got a 2-year-old, I run a business. Like, my life is just go, go, go. But I went to the GP and I saw this really good GP, and he suggested that it might be a abscess/fistula, and you could actually have Crohn's disease instead of colitis. He reached out to my team. My surgeon said, yep, let's get her in for an MRI scan. The MRI scan was booked, but I don't know what happened. Like 4 days later, whatever was going on reared its ugly head. So I got really swollen I started noticing real bad swelling just between, this is such a TMI conversation, but you know me guys, between my flower, my vajayjay, and my anus. And obviously the abscess was obviously pushing then against the skin. And obviously in the meantime, it'd been sort of festering away and just growing and thriving up deeper, and obviously tracked as well. So I had an emergency surgical unit referral from my GP surgery, and 2 days later I went in for my first emergency surgery. I'm just a little bit angry when I talk about this, because the surgeon who performed the surgery should never have had a go at me, because obviously I'm quite a complex setup now. I'm not like your average person with a complete rectum and large intestine. I've got a J pouch. But I had thought what he had done was the correct thing. He made an incision, he drained the abscess, and then he put a seton, I think that's how you pronounce it, in place. And, I kind of left the hospital the same day, thankfully, that evening. And I was almost relieved of the fact they'd found what was going on with me. But then I had so many different questions going on about like what, why, how. Could this be Crohn's disease? What's the future for my J pouch? So I knew that I would not be able to get an appointment quickly through the NHS with my own surgeon. So I used my initiative and I booked a private appointment with him, and it was actually the week later. And when I went to see him, I was still in quite a lot of pain. I still felt like very tight in that area. Like, when you got a spot and it just like feels really tight, and as soon as you pop it you get relief. Like I didn't feel like I had that relief, and I know it's like so TMI, but I mean, this illness isn't glamorous, right? So this is just the nature of the beast. And he said, can I examine you quickly? I said, yeah, sure, go ahead. Like, the only reason why I booked this appointment, right, was just to get some peace of mind and some knowledge on what my future is going to hold with what's going on. And yeah, in a nutshell, he said, can you come back into hospital you know, in 2 days' time, and can I do this procedure again on you, because the incision that was made wasn't big enough, and the seton that was put in wasn't large enough. And I was like my whole world was just like, I wanted the ground to swallow me up right there and then, because I just went to that appointment for peace of mind. And obviously I came out of that appointment with some peace of mind. I got the answers to the questions that I needed to be answered. But also then I had this next surgery looming over me. And I just felt a bit beaten up, if I'm being completely honest with you. Just the whole of February was a complete shit show for me, guys. It was just a complete write-off. And I had such bad mum guilt because I was unable to do all the things that I like to do with my son, because, you know, I was a little slower. I was in pain. And, you know, thank God I've got an amazing husband who was there and could do everything for me. And he goes above and beyond anyway. Like, he's an incredible man and an incredible parent, but that guilt was still there. And this is the first time I've had anything to do with my illness kind of happen as a mum. So it's been quite an emotional roller coaster in that aspect. And then obviously having to deal with this whole new thing that's going on and processing that. But yeah, 2 days later, I was back in hospital and the correct surgery was done. It was a more of an invasive surgery. So I had an open wound, regular checkups with the doctor. I did get an infection, antibiotics, and now it's just a waiting game to see if any more abscesses occur, because obviously fistulas are very, very hard to track because they like to branch off. And then it's also finding out how this happened. So if it is Crohn's disease, if it's just a sheer coincidence, which I'm kind of hoping that it is, like, unlucky as it is, it just means that, like, you know, my diagnosal hasn't changed, and, you know, my J pouch, you know, it looked great inside when he'd done the surgery, but because it was so close to my J pouch, we don't know if it's related to my J pouch. There's loads of different questions that we need answers to. So until I have another repeat MRI scan in about 10 weeks' time, we are just sitting and waiting and seeing what happens. And to finish this little update for you, I hope it's not too long. I feel like I've kind of rambled on a little bit, so sorry if it doesn't make any sense. At the end of last year, I was dead certain that I wanted to go back on stage this year. So in 2025, you know, everything that my body's been through, you know, going through childbirth, you know, being 2 years postpartum at that point, I was like, I'm ready to, like, get back on stage. But then me and my husband decided that we wanted to expand our family instead. And, you know, we started this year really, really excited about the prospect of having another child by the end of this year or early 2026. And, you know, right now I feel like I'm in limbo with everything that's going on, and we've obviously been recommended to put things on hold because obviously with what's going on in my body. But then I also feel like I'm, like, just stuck in this place right now, and I'm not going to get upset because I feel like I've just, like, given a lot of energy to this lately. But this is, like, the reality of living with a chronic illness. You know, one minute everything is absolutely fine, and then the next moment your whole life can be turned upside down, and the plans that you had planned are, you know, potentially no longer there anymore. You know, there's changes that need to be made, and I'm just feeling in a really weird limbo stage at the moment. And, you know, even if we do get the, you know, thumbs up to try for another baby, I'm now wondering if my body can handle it. Not necessarily the pregnancy itself, but the aftermath. You know, my body has been through so much already, and I've fought so hard to get back to the place I am now, the last thing I want to do is risk my quality of life. And, you know, I've already got the most beautiful little boy, and I feel so lucky to even have him. So I'm just kind of all over the place at the moment with this, and I just feel like I'm blurting it out onto a vlog. But as you've kind of seen through my journey, at one point I didn't think it was even possible to have a child. So I'm going to take that as the silver lining here, that I already have such a beautiful family, and I have to really think about my quality of life and where I want to be in the next 10, 15 years in terms of my own physical health and well-being. And, you know, I'm a big believer that everything happens for a reason, and maybe this is my body's way of just telling me that another pregnancy right now would just be too much. So I'm just going to sit, wait, reflect, process, and whatever happens, whether we get answers or not, I'm not going to let this situation consume me, because only time will tell, and I have to live for today because we just don't know what tomorrow brings. So I think that's a nice place to round up this vlog. I hope it didn't sound like I rambled on too much. So if you do have a fistula, and you know, if you live with a fistula, and if you have any hints and tips, please comment below with, you know, things you recommend, because obviously I am still learning to live with my fistula / seton. So I would much appreciate all the advice I can get. But until next time, guys, and I promise you I will keep you updated on this journey. I hope you all have a fabulous morning, afternoon, evening, whatever time of day you are watching this.